Welcome to The Disruption Is Now. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore how AI is impacting our jobs, careers, lives, and the human experience. Each episode, host Greg Matusky will converse with visionaries and innovators at the forefront of AI, diving into its challenges, opportunities, and impact. So buckle up as we venture into the heart of disruption, and together, let's unfold the future.
Well, welcome to another episode of The Disruption Is Now, where we talk about AI and how it's disrupting all that we know about human communications and our economy. I've got a fascinating guest here today who comes to us from Fidelity Labs, and that's a place out of Fidelity Investments, which incubates some of the latest and greatest fintech in the world. And Vall Herard is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Saifr.ai. And that's playing a major role in financial services and a very, very technical aspect of it as far as compliance, which is a bugaboo for many of those who have to run a business in alignment with highly regulated industries. Val, did I get that right? Is that what we're all about?
Yes. No, you have that correct. What Saifr does is really trying to provide a way in which companies can create content in a compliant way much, much faster than is traditionally the case with human review of content, if you will.
So that is interesting to me because we are a public relations agency and we deal a lot in financial services, and the demand for content just is going up and up and up. And one of the issues that we play a role in is we know the industry well, so we're expert in compliance and how to write copy and content that applies. That doesn't mean it still doesn't go through compliance. It doesn't mean that we don't work hand in glove with our clients. Why don't you explain how that works? Is this a standalone application with its own LLM, or is this in the browser that works with an LLM? How exactly does that compliance component work with Saifr?
Yes. So the way to think about Saifr is that think if you had a compliance spell checker. So imagine that content is getting created either through a large language model, or else it's getting created by a human person sitting at a computer and then typing something into any application such as Office or any others of those other applications that people use to create content. And having an ability, as you are writing that content, for a system to say, hey, if you are using the following sentence in this context, it may pose a compliance risk. To first highlight that so that you can see it, but also to suggest language in terms of how you can make that sentence compliant. You can change the structure of it, if you will. And then in other instances, if you've ever seen any sort of financial document, they are literally maybe one page of content followed by 6 pages of disclosures. And so we have the ability, as we are reading and understanding that content, to also suggest what disclosures would be appropriate and required for the specific use case that you are writing about. And so in that way, what we are trying to do is really not remove the compliance officer from the process. They're still needed to review the final copy because at the end, we are using models, and models will get things wrong, or else there wouldn't be models. And so you still need to have that human review process in place, that human in the loop, if you will. But as you are creating the content, if you are a marketing person whose job function is to be a great writer, not to be a compliance officer, we can help you create that content so that by the time you send it to your colleagues in compliance, it's that much closer to being compliant. And so there's less of a back and forth in terms of exchanging copies, if you will.
And in that way, it really does fit with this model of AI being an assistant, right? It's not actually doing the work for you, but it sits on your shoulder and it makes recommendations and it gives you alternatives that you can do. And I'm seeing that more and more in the realm of content. It's not so much that that it writes the whole thing or that it replaces the marketing person or the content creator. It's rather it's a additive to the process. And for instance, you might have an assistant that's your researcher, or you might have an assistant that actually writes long form white papers, an assistant that has been tuned to the exact voice of the client by doing a custom GPT. Is that how you're thinking of this?
Yes, that's definitely how we're thinking about it. It's really, can we provide in regulated industries? Because what you don't have with a lot of the assistants that systems or assistant system that you just described is the ability for them to produce content that is compliant based on rules in very specific industries. So within financial services, we have the SEC marketing rule, for example. We have FINRA rules around what you can or cannot say in public communications, right? And communicating with the public. Uh, and so large language models such as a chat GPT, they have a hard time, and we've tried to get them to produce content that's always consistent with those regulations. They're not able to do that. And so what we do is really provide, in a sense, a wrapper that can sit around these large language models so that when they do generate content for you, they can look at that content and make it compliant. But also, if you create the content, because the creative aspect of it will always come from a human person, a marketing person, if you will, who will write the content, also help them make that content more compliant. So, whether the content is coming from an AI model or it's coming from a human, we are able to wrap Saifr, if you will, around whatever the system is that you are using to produce that content to make the output compliant with those industry rules. And the reason for that is obvious, is somewhat obvious. Those rules are in place to protect investors. And so, in many ways, by providing this compliant assistant, this, if you will, compliance grammar check is how I like to describe it. We are helping companies not only get a product out there faster in terms of describing what products they have available, but also making it so that the consumer is safe, right? In this case, the end user customer is an investor, and you cannot communicate in a misleading fashion, for example. That's with investors. What we do is ensure that the communications are compliant when they're being generated, either from an assistant or else from when they're generated by a human.
So that's one lane you've been running in. And then you recently had an acquisition, which puts you in a bit of a different lane. Tell me a little about GOST AI and what attracted Saifr to that, and what your big vision is for now having two very effective tools in financial services.
Well, that's an interesting story. The reason why we were attracted to the system GOST that was built by a company called Giant Oak is the fact that underlying a lot of the work that they've done is a set of AI models that will allow you to monitor for instances where a company has a concern around KYC or AML or adverse media. And it turns out that a lot of the underlying models that they built and use are very similar to the models that we're using in Saifr as well. And so consequently, the same economic buyer that Saifr was speaking to, in many instances, it's the same chief compliance officer who's running the financial crimes, for example, compliance program at an institution. And so, what attracted us to Ghost is really the use of AI in a very novel way to try and solve uh, global sanctions, for example, adverse media. Uh, there's an entire framework around AML uh, and KYC that companies have to adhere to that this technology helps address. But more importantly than that, it's the ability for to index the web in a different way and use large language models, both the public web and the dark web, uh, and to use large language models to tease out information uh, in furtherance of the compliance goals of various departments. So, in one instance, you might have a client who where you have a compliance officer who's not only responsible for the marketing communications, they'll have someone who's responsible for that for them, but they'll also have someone who's responsible for financial crimes compliance, which is where you find AML, KYC, adverse media, and so on and so forth. Now we can essentially provide an AI capability to those two sets of users using a common set of models.
So this is it's a adjacent type of service, right? And it fits well within the buyer profile, what they're looking for. Explain to me, like, adverse media. What is it out there looking for, and what is the alert that goes with that? What would it be able to sniff out or index, as you said?
So, for example, if you are interested in onboarding, uh, if you have a platform, and that could be any platform, although we are speaking strictly about financial services, but any platform that you are trying to keep bad actors off of that platform, you can provide it with the name of an entity, and that could be a company. So, for example, there are use cases in vendor management as well, where is this someone that I want to do business with, or whether it's a person or it's a company. And so we are able to then use that information to surface, if you will, from the public record. Again, I think it's worth noting, from the public record, we are able to essentially tie all of the pieces is to paint a picture in terms of how risky that entity is. Um, whether it's a person, whether it's a company. And as I alluded to earlier, it turns out that a lot of the large language models that we use underneath in both Saifr as well as in the Ghost product are very similar in nature. And so that's why for us that acquisition made sense, because it fits into this larger narrative of being able to provide a set of AI-based compliance solutions that make that work so much, the compliance work easier, if you will, for companies to comply with.
So what's next for Safer then? Where do you stand in your go to market, and then are you looking for additional types of add-on compliance tools that you could make Safer that all-in-one one-stop shop for compliance and financial services?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a set of capabilities that again leverages a lot of the work that we've done in natural language processing that we are intending on bringing to market. So we've built models that are capable of detecting, for example, when you are looking at a content, what sort of audience would that content be applicable to? So, for example, if you are interested in uh, creating compliant marketing content or communications, doesn't have to be, could be blogs, could be whatever, right? Uh, and you are targeting young investors, let's say investors between the age is of 20 and 30, who self-identified either as male, female, or somewhere in between. Uh, we are able to look at that content and not only help you make it compliant, but also give you some indication in terms of, yes, this audience, this content will appeal to that kind of audience more so than to a different kind of audience that you may be interested in. And so from a marketing standpoint, it's not only kind of like the compliance aspect, it's really providing additional analytics to help you create content faster, more targeted, so that you can be more efficient. Other areas that we've looked at, and we have we've built a set of models that we haven't uh, started marketing to our customers yet, is around the whole issue of electronic communications compliance. So, as you know, within financial services, depending on whether or not you're a monitored person, your text messages, your email messages have to be checked for compliance reasons. And so the way that the industry traditionally approaches this issue is by really indexing or archiving all of the messages. And then after the fact, you have people who will, compliance officers who will sift through, in some instances, mountains and mountains, millions and millions of messages to try and find instances where there was something that was non-compliant and to take corrective action, whether that's training and so on and so forth. So we've built a set of models where, similar to what we previously did with on the marketing communication side, at the end, when someone is getting ready to write, let's say a text message or an email, we can actually run a set of models through that and see, for example, is there insider trading information in that communication, so that we can provide a warning upfront before the risk is generated, if you will. Unlike what the industry typically does right now, which is after the risk has been generated, someone comes in after the fact. What we are trying to do is to provide a way in which companies can detect when the risk is about to happen, provide some alerts so that people can take corrective actions. And so we think that's very exciting. And so it's a capability that we've been working on for a number of different policies, if you will. So, for example, when people do quid pro quos, that's another form of illicit activity that we are able to detect through these kinds of models. And so we're looking forward to bring those capabilities out. And not only, what I said earlier in terms of providing a firewall for large language models, this capability, if you are using a large language model to generate an email, we can also check for these compliance rules, if you will, in that generated content as well.
Well, you are to be congratulated on a couple fronts. I think as far as the industry itself, this adds another layer of efficiency in creating content, and risk management on the Ghost side. But I think it's also good for the investor, the ultimate consumer. Certainly, sniffing out bad players is only to the advantage of the investor, but also to the investor who's looking over different opportunities. I think this is a real step forward. In some ways, I've always envisioned that AI would play a big role in the compliance process because it is tedious, and it's hard to sometimes communicate it to other members of the firm, to educate others in how it's done. And a lot of times you will have a content creator who's good at what they do, but is insulated from the regulations and the stipulations that go along with creating that content. Hard thing to get through sometimes. And I think this is a big step forward in providing that overview and helping them direct their content on the first attempt, and doing it in a way that's compliant. So congratulations. Fidelity Labs is working on, which you also are a member of as a senior vice president, if I understand correctly, is creating a really incredible portfolio of new fintech products, which is only going to add to the universe of efficiency, productivity, and compliance in the financial services arena. So thanks for being being with us today, and keep working at it. I think it is a real solution for us that have to create that content.
No, thank you, Greg. And I guess one final thing that I would say is that when you think of Saifr, think about responsible AI and how we are using latching onto that idea to really help reduce costs, make processes more efficient, but also, to your point, reduce risk for investors. Because at the end of the day, whether you're looking for potential bad actors or looking at helping companies create content that avoid some of the risks that we've talked about, we think that the Saifr application can help companies.
And in a broader sense, I mean, that's one of the big criticisms of AI is what is the potential risks that it opens? And I've often said, and I've been a part of this now for 4 years, that those risks can be dealt with. They might not all be in place today, but it's something that large language models can approach and can overcome. And I think you're one of the lead examples of that, is that not only does it add to efficiency, but it does close down some of those initial suspicions of risk that people brought to LLMs originally. And as I see us going forward, I see more companies like you creating solutions which take away the criticism which plagued the first year and a half of this great experiment.
The first wave. No, I mean, I think the velocity with which these models are great, because the velocity and the efficiency with which people can create content has gone up exponentially. But as the velocity has gone up, the number of compliance people that you need to keep up with the fact that there's more and more content gets harder and harder. And so what Saifr is trying to do is make it easier for companies to deal with the increased volume while still being compliant and leveraging those large language models.
And as a last note, I'll say just time to market with those deliverables, right? It's the market moves every day, and there's things that need to be said every day. And because of compliance, that's sometimes hard to do because you have an intermediary step. So I think it's really important that you can meet the timing of the market with compliant content, which creates a brand. So congratulations, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for having me.
This podcast is a production of Gregory FCA. If you enjoyed our discussion today and want to continue exploring the transformative power of AI, please check out more episodes and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.